Hello, my name is Antonio Bertone, and this is my political cartoon presentation. So pretty much our assignment was to use political cartoons to develop a presentation that addresses two sides of a key issue in the media's legal and/or policy landscape. It was tough to get started at first just because there are so many different political hot button issues, and it's really interesting to look at them through political cartoons and see the different sides in the opposing arguments from the different positions. And so narrowing it down to one topic that I wanted to focus on was probably one of the more challenging aspects. After deciding on the topic of gun control, the most difficult aspect for me was to narrow it down to two political cartoons that reflected the individual sides of the argument. Just because there are so many different options out there and because it is such a hot topic, narrowing it down to the two best choices was definitely tough. So the first cartoon I selected is from the conservative point of view, kind of tearing down the liberal way of thinking when it comes to gun control. So the first three sections of the cartoon shows a man beating, strangling, and stabbing another man. And the issue, or the blame, is on the man who committed the crime. However, in the last section of the cartoon, when he shoots the man, all of a sudden the blame is put on the gun. With all political cartoons, there's going to be a certain degree of bias, there's going to be a certain degree of exaggeration or fault in how the opposing argument is illustrated or perceived. This particular cartoon does a good job of showing that. So what generally the illustrator tries to do is they latch on to the faults in the opposing argument. The particular fault in the liberals' argument being that guns are at fault for the crimes being committed using a gun. So whether it's a fault in their way of thinking or if it's a legitimate, argument, that's what the conservative is latching onto. So in beating, strangling, and stabbing, the issue is with the person that committed the crime. However, with the shooting, it's the fault of the gun. The liberal way of thinking might be that by limiting the amount of guns out there, or by in some way controlling the availability of guns, that it would decrease the amount of crimes being committed. However, the conservative in the cartoon exaggerates the point as it's the fault of the gun that the crime was committed, where in the other aspects, it's the fault of the person committing the crime. The second cartoon I chose is the polar opposite of the first cartoon. It's from the liberal point of view, attacking the conservative way of thinking. So they're saying that there's no correlation between gun availability and mass shootings, and that's what the conservative believes. But then 50, 60 years ago, they also believed that there was no correlation between smoking and lung disease, and there clearly was. Now, there are biases, there are exaggerations with this political cartoon as well. However, it's from the opposing point of view, where the liberals attacking the issues that they have with the conservative way of thinking or the conservative ideas as they pertain to gun control. It's interesting to look at the two cartoons together because you see the differences in opinion. You see the way that the conservative perceives the liberal, so they look at them like when a crime is committed with a gun, then it's the fault of the gun, not the fault of the person committing the crime. And you see the point, or you see the views of the liberal as well, where looking at the conservative like there is no correlation between gun availability and mass shootings. Now, I'm sure that both has an opinion somewhere in between. However, when it's looked at from the political cartoon point of view, you see the opposite ends of the spectrum. What's very interesting about analyzing the political cartoons is you see very clearly the different biases that there are. So where different news sites and different news outlets have different opinions and have different, ways of presenting news stories based on their political affiliation, political cartoons are the same except they don't try to hide it. So it's out there, it's evident, and it's interesting to look at to see, the different point of views like in that way.